The Last of Us Season 2 had a lot of highs, but just as many lows. As someone who really enjoyed the first season, I really wanted to enjoy the second. Admittedly, I was kind of skeptical going in, but, after the first season, I assumed that the second would be also pretty good and, enjoyable. However, there were a lot of inconsistencies and mischaracterizations that were just hard to overlook. The character I'm going to focus on in this video will be Abby Anderson, and we're going to talk about how her video game character was translated to the TV show. Let's begin with talking about her character in the game and how sudden and important her introduction was, and then we're going to move on to talking about her actual adaptation in the show and how that was handled and how it's going to be handled moving forward in Season 3. We all know the story of The Last of Us follows Joel Miller and Ellie Williams. After the first game, the world anticipated a sequel that would further explore their relationship as father and daughter. Not biologically, but you know what I mean. More specifically, people were interested in what would become of Ellie. When Part 2 was revealed, we learned that Ellie was going to be the character that we play as in the game. The stage was set for Ellie to take center stage and to tell a story from her perspective and have Joel take a sideline position and, be a mentor or a father figure, perhaps some kind of... So, in hindsight, we could probably guess that Joel was gonna die based on a few things from the first panel for The Last of Us Part 2.
The story's about hate and how we use all those same things to make the player feel that through Ellie this time. First game is like you play as Joel, this game you're playing as Ellie.
Do you think The Last of Us can exist without Joel and Ellie? I mean, are they The Last of Us? I mean, what is your interpretation of what we've seen and understood so far?
Don't look at me.
It's so much, they're the heart of it. I don't see it without them.
Joel's death was unexpected for most people who played the game, but what was even more unexpected was for him to be killed by another young woman who, unbeknownst to us at the moment, would be arguably the new protagonist of the Last of Us franchise. Okay, saying that Abby Anderson is Ellie's replacement or the new protagonist of The Last of Us might rustle some feathers, and frankly, that isn't true. Ellie is and will always be her, but Abby really threw a wrench, or dare I say, a hammer, in the whole narrative. We were expecting to play the entirety of The Last of Us Part 2 from Ellie's perspective, but obviously, that was not the case. Ellie doesn't walk out of that game with more story to tell. Abby is the one who has more or less an open-ended ending that could lead to another sequel. Honestly, I was reluctant to play Abby's part of the game, but honestly, her part of the game, though her 3 days in Seattle, were almost more memorable and interesting than Ellie's. We have a lot more Scar and WLF backstory and just content in general. We have the Rat King. We have just Lev and Yara, who are just really interesting characters. Overall, I feel like most of my fond memories of The Last of Us Part 2 came from Abby's part or her section of the story. It seems like Naughty Dog has set up Abby to be pretty much the new protagonist for The Last of Us, and the HBO adaptation is seemingly doing the same thing, especially with Season 3 being all about Abby's side of the story, which, like I said, I personally found a lot more interesting than Ellie's part of the story. I can totally see Season 3 being much more exciting and respected among fans. This video will focus on HBO's characterization of Abby and how important aspects of her video game counterpart are lost in translation. So I'm only going to focus on two aspects of Abby's character. These are the most important ones in my opinion, and two things that are kind of closely related. Those two things are Abby's muscles and Abby's fear of heights. One, we already know, isn't going to be involved in the adaptation, and the other, we have yet to really see whether or not that's going to be included. I'll talk about how the presence of these aspects affect her character and what their implications are for Season 3. Will Abby's story in Season 3 be more compelling and interesting than Ellie's? And would that make her the true protagonist of The Last of Us show? Let's get into it. Let's talk. So first point I want to bring up is that they are missing the mark with Abby in the show so far. I just want to preface with, no hate to the actors themselves, Caitlin Dever, even Bella Ramsey, anyone involved, in the acting department, the actors themselves, I don't blame. Any issues with characterization, dialogue, script, that is pinned on the writers, the showrunners. So that's Craig Mazin, Neil Druckmann, although Neil Druckmann, he directed like the one really, really good episode this season. So respect to Neil. Good job, Neil. But anyway, the actors themselves, I have no issues with them. Let's get into it, all right? So first of all, no muscles. HBO's Abby does not have the muscle definition that she is known for in the game. Now, I have no issues with Caitlin Dever, like I said. I imagine she would have bulked up if she were asked to. My problem is with Craig Mazin being so confident and sure about Abby's physique not being an important aspect of her character whatsoever. Craig has stated that her physique is a result of game mechanics and needing a different play style when you're playing as her. When casting for the show, he stated that there was no need to consider gameplay, so they didn't consider the muscles either. They chose to cast for somebody that captured Abby's spirit. I'm sure Caitlin does this just fine, and honestly, she's been doing a pretty good job. But the fact that the showrunners completely rule out Abby's physique as a simple gameplay mechanic and nothing else, that's what bothers me. Yes, Abby's physique is for the sake of gameplay and allowing for an aggressive play style, in contrast to Ellie's more stealthy, quick play style. But it is also undoubtedly tied to her desire for revenge and what drives her character to do what she does to Joel. Abby spent 5 years preparing to take revenge on her father's killer. She understood that Joel is a man that's capable of not just transporting a girl across the country, but also taking down an entire hospital full of fireflies. That man killed her father and took everything from her. Her physique implies that she has been working out, pumping iron, and preparing herself physically and emotionally to kill Joel. Her muscles are a sign of her resolve, her drive to avenge her father. Taking them away weakens her character. Can they still express her drive for revenge without the physique? Yeah, they're doing it, but it's just something, it's what I've preached in my reviews, that there is something in the game that works very well. There's no problems with it. Why change it in the adaptation if it makes the content weaker? Why? Why, Craig? Why? Should they have forced Caitlin Dever to hit the gym and get shredded? No, of course not. I just disagree with the way that Craig Mazin is detaching Abby's physique from her character. He's just completely like, that was strictly for gameplay. That is not needed in this adaptation, so her muscles are irrelevant. It's like, no, Craig, the muscles are important. I want muscles. What else is left to see? We still haven't seen Abby's fear of heights, and obviously we haven't really spent much time with her aside from, But since Craig likes to associate characteristics to gameplay mechanics, I've grown a little bit concerned about whether or not they'll include Abby's fear of heights in Season 3. In the game, Abby has a fear of heights, right? And in terms of character, the fear of heights isn't a result of anything she's done or motivate decisions that she makes. This detail about Abby is mostly a gaming mechanic. It is meant to change gameplay, just like her physique was. The mission where her fear of heights is most relevant is the crane mission, where Abby's crossing a crane up in the air. You could argue that this is an important moment to her character because she faces something that she's afraid of. That is true, and it's important, right? But in the cordyceps-infested world they live in, when are you not facing a fear? Death is literally at every corner. So facing a fear of heights is about the same as going up, face to face with a bloater. So in my opinion, this crane mission is meant to give the player a hard time and add tension to the gameplay by using Abby's fear of heights to make this a much more dramatic experience and really put you in her shoes and looking down and seeing everything just kind of like zoom out and give you this vertigo effect. It's for the sake of gameplay. So since this detail is mostly tied to gameplay, will this be removed from Season 3 just like Abby's muscles were? Because they're both tied to gameplay. So the question that I'm asking here is, what is more important to Abby's character? Her muscles, her physique, or her fear of heights? Let me know in the comments, because we know what HBO, or specifically Craig Mazin, likely think, but I want to know what you think as a fan of the game, or someone who's a fan of the show so far. Let me know what you guys think. The show has already shown us that they plan on adapting the crane scene, and what makes that scene work is the fact that Abby has a fear of heights. So we already know that HBO, or Craig Mazin, value her fear of heights as a characteristic over her physique. I disagree with this. Yes, her fear is necessary for the crane scene to work. However, I don't think including the scene is worth excluding a part of her character that is fundamental to her trauma and motivations as a character. One characteristic makes sense for a tense scene, while another characteristic makes a more dynamic, driven, and relatable character. One is more of a foundation to what makes her who she is, and the other is just, let's make this mission a little bit harder and more tense for the player. So I want to talk about relatability. So let's talk about her physique first. By relatability, I'm talking about getting fit as a coping mechanism. Many people and characters in media go on, quote unquote, a training arc. Focusing on real people, there are situations where someone goes through a heartbreak, or they're going through depression, some kind of hardship in general. Many people find peace and healing by hitting the gym. They better themselves and cope with whatever, difficult situation they're dealing with. They do this through exercise. This characteristic of Abby is something people could relate to on a deep level. Abby most likely bulked up not just because she wanted to in order to effectively get revenge, but because she used working out as an outlet for her grief and anger, like many people do. On the contrary, a fear of heights, her fear of heights is relatable on a less profound level. Many people have a fear of heights, but those fears aren't really tied to anything deep or emotional. They could be. They definitely could be. I'm sure there's people out there with fears of heights that are, emotionally driven or from traumatic experiences. But for the most part, fear of heights just happen naturally. They are just sort of basic sort of instinct of like, I am too high up. Humans can't fly. So of course you're going to be terrified of falling. These two aspects of Abby's character have a sort of interesting duality. I think Abby's character is interesting in the game because of her physique and her fear of heights. The fact that this strong woman with an imposing presence is immediately sent into an anxious, trembling spiral of fear is really cool. It's dynamic. It adds texture to the character, if that makes sense. It creates a duality of strength and vulnerability. It's an important part of Abby's character that she has this great strength, but that all goes away when she finds herself, in an elevated, high up in the air environment. I see this, similar to a superhero losing his suit, and they have to find the strength within themselves in order to push forward. Take, for example, Spider-Man in Homecoming, when Tony Stark revokes his suit privileges and Peter has to find strength within himself to stop the Vulture. Abby relies on her strength, and the crane scene works well because when she's up there, she's not strong. The muscles that she has become irrelevant, and she needs to find inner strength to push through her fear of heights. Since she doesn't have her muscles to begin with in the show, I believe the crane scene won't hold the same weight that it does in the game. It already set itself up to be less compelling than its source material simply by removing her physique. Because now, in this scene, she's just gonna be afraid of heights. There isn't going to be a duality of being strong normally and then suddenly having to adapt and be like, okay, I need to rely on inner strength and find strength within myself and not rely on this, physicality that she has. It's more of a mental battle that she's fighting now as opposed to the usual physical battle that she's fighting, against other people and infected and whatever it is that she's encountering. I hope they do something that will make up for it, or introduce something new regarding Abby's character that will make her as interesting as she is in the game. Overall, Abby's character is difficult to fully judge because of the fact that we haven't spent enough time with the character. Hopefully in season 3, we have more to, dig into, more to judge the character on, and hopefully it all turns out well. Hopefully it's all good things. Hopefully it's an improvement on what we know in the game. What do you think about how she's being adapted so far? Do you mind her lack of muscles? Do you think her fear of heights is as important to her character than her muscles are? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'd really like to hear what you guys have to say about this. And yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. That will be it for now, and hope you have a good rest of your day, night, morning, evening, year. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. But yeah, I hope you have a good rest of your day, and goodbye. See you on the next one.